Hi, I'm Juan,
And I'm Edgar.
and welcome
Back to the brush. Today we have some interesting topics of discussion. We're going to be talking about having an intimidating painter, someone who is better at painting some of the fancy images on Instagram and all the other places,
YouTube
and how that affects psychologically affects you when it comes to painting. And we're also going to be talking about some models that you might want, and is it because that they're models that already exist that are really rare, or is it because it's something that you want to make yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And of course we'll be looking at some of the models that we have made and painted over the course of the last month since our last episode.
Yeah, so I've got some crossover with bits I've made with this month's topics, so that's quite cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do this little thing where we have the order redactors. So if you spot any errors or inconsistencies in what we're saying in this video, feel free to whack those in the comments below, and we'll address them at the end of next month's episode.
Yeah, I have a transmission from last month here ready to go, but we'll do that at the end.
All the models we're going to be showing today, we'll have a selection of higher quality images on our Instagram, as always. So you can go over there and look at those in more detail.
Cool. But first, shall we have a look at some of the models that we have made over the last month? And as you might expect, I'm going to start with some Tanith first and only. What a surprise. I have a few that I have painted this month. I think the interesting one is probably this one, because I made...
It does look incredibly low.
I made a silicon mold so that I could resin pour some water effect into this little silicon mold.
Okay, so he's wading.
So he's just like up to his chest, basically, in water through the water. I'm planning on doing about 5 of them. I'm not planning on doing a full squad of 10, but a half squad of 5 probably. Because
What boys and girls?
Yeah, various models just up to there, and I can cut them at different parts of the model. For this one, I just didn't glue the legs on.
Glue the legs on.
But if I cut the legs and glue the top half of the leg on, it will be a little bit higher, obviously, so I can adjust how deep they are in the water. I also have more on the 3D printing side of things. I have a couple of models for Stalker, which I'm kind of slowly doing bits and bobs of. And there's just a guy in an exosuit and I think this is a generic modern soldier, but I'm using it in that capacity.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly seems to have a modern rifle in his hand.
Yes, that I think that is an AK-103. I think it's a really, if I remember the model that I downloaded, it is a very nice, high detailed model of a modern AK rifle. The other guy has a Lego RPK. You can't see it in the picture you've got, but it's on his back.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have a nicer picture separate. But that is from Thingiverse, and it's a Lego scale RPK that I've shrunk to make it even smaller to fit this. And oddly, other than the stock, everything looks fine. The stock is too short, but other than that, the rest of the proportions are fine. So I've actually been looking around at other Lego stuff on Thingiverse, because, and this is something we keep coming back to on the podcast, real scale versus hero scale. Lego is really cartoony, obviously, kind of, if you think about Lego objects like the loud hailer that is in every kit and all these other bits. So when someone makes something for Lego, it's way on the cartoony side to fit in with everything else. And so when we scale it down, make it a little bit smaller, and then print it, it's going to print nicely, and it's also going to paint nicely and look better than a real scale thing, which would end up being just a little thin wire that would just break.
Yeah, I mean, having done that myself with these things, they're so floaty sniper rifle.
Yeah, exactly. That is almost certainly the correct scale. That's a real scale sniper rifle for a model of the size we make. And this is why hero scale exists, because it's just so thin it can't possibly like hold itself in a straight line. That one was bent, others are just break. So it's this type of thing, and I think that's my hot tip for this week is Lego. If you do 3D printing and you want stuff for like 28mm models, find some Lego stuff. Obviously, you'll have to scale it down because Lego, not only is it very cartoony, but it's also much bigger. So you have to scale it down. I don't remember how much I scaled this one down. I printed this over a year ago.
Wow. Okay.
This is one of the first things when Paul gave me the resin printer. This is one of the first things I printed, probably in the first month. This is off of the red resin.
Ah, okay, yeah, the resin I gave you with it.
Yeah, exactly. Also, another 3D printed thing, probably also in the red resin, because I printed this, it was horrible, didn't like it, dumped it in the pile of opportunity, and then recently came back to, is this little chap, who is, as you would, everyone in the audience probably should already know, this is Razz from the Psychonauts games.
I've never heard of these games. So.
And Paul, being a heathen and a charlatan, has not played them, but there is a Razz. This is, I think this is a game rip. So this is actually like directly Razz from the game. That geometry turned into an STL and then printed.
I mean, it looks familiar to me, but beyond that, I couldn't.
There is a very famous zero punctuation video that I'm going to have to send you once we finish recording, because that's important, and you need to play Psychonauts because it's a great game. And Psychonauts 2 has already come out, I think. It's also very expensive, so I haven't got it yet. I will eventually get it because I want it, but for the moment, there's my Razz, my little Razz.
Okay, so last month, me and Ed got together and we played some 40k games with my Death Guard cultist sort of army and Ed's Tanith.
Yep. Good fun was had.
Lots of videos of that over on Ed's channel.
I think the first battle report will have gone live last week, as far as this podcast goes up. And then there are 5 battle reports in total, so there's plenty more coming. Do continue.
So I have spent the month mostly painting Death Guard models, none of which to completion because rushing. But I've got we got some cool stuff. So I've got this Land Raider here.
That does look pretty cool.
So the person that I bought this off eBay pre-made, the person who I bought this off has pre-modified it with some like green stuff, mold, and there's bits of zombies all sort of encased into it. This is really cool, and I'm going to come back to this later when we talk about custom models.
Yeah.
It's got a Forge World sort of doors on it as well, which is cool. So yes, I've got this guy, not quite finished painting him. The gunner there, not even attached, and that. But yeah, so that's coming along. When we played, I hadn't finished painting my Psyker up, and I still haven't finished painting my Psyker up because it constantly breaks. But moving on is pretty cool.
It's getting there. It's getting there.
I don't like this. A lot of people, what you talk to on the Reddit, don't like this. It's supposed to be like
the magical effect.
Yeah, it's now there is from last month I was showing or the month before I was showing some of the models that I got from the Loot Crate pack. This hang on. Oh, I've been using this to test paint on. But this the Space Marine Hero Series 3. The Japanese version of this got a Japan exclusive, which was a much cooler model of one of these. So I am trying to find one of those without being ripped off.
So I actually have in my bits box already set up and ready to do some modifications to. Is a misprint from my FDM printer. And it was when my FDM printer has been completely unreliable since the day I got it, but one of the things it did was it was spewing out plastic out of the side. So instead of the material coming like through the hot end in, through the nozzle and out like it should, it was coming up through the threads where the parts have been screwed together and it was squirting out the side. And it made this long kind of tube of almost like spaghetti as it's been like built up over a few minutes as it was coming out. And it really looks cool in this kind of tube with a slight flick at one end. And so my plan is to make an orc weird boy, casting that out of his hand as like a magical psychic kind of blast. And
I saw someone on Etsy selling those. They were like psychic blasts. That I think they were resin printed, but they looked amazing. Really cool stuff.
There are some really cool options out there.
Another thing I spotted, and this is made by, can I remember the company name? Wargame Exclusive.
Wow.
So this is, I've shown Ed because I ordered this while Ed's house.
The Chaos Biker.
So
I love the wheels on this thing. It's like gums and teeth forming up the wheels. So
I have blue tacked this together just for today's filming, but obviously the chappy is done separately, his head's done separately, and the bike's done separately. So I've primed the bike in black and primed the man in green. But yeah, he's really cool. It came with like a base for it to go on, which has got some skeletons and stuff. I'm not 100% on that. I don't think I'm going to use that. I've got the correct scale base for a Primaris biker, which is what I'm going to use to base it. So at least
that's about right.
Yeah.
Would you put the original base as a base topper?
I don't like it. I don't know if I like it or not.
Do you just not like it at all? I'll tell you what.
So I might just go without.
It
will fit on this.
I know how to trick you into using it. If you paint it,
yeah.
If you paint it, you'll suddenly like it.
Well, there's rock at the top. There's rock at the bottom. There's what looks like bubbles in like a swamp. Oh, I'm a bit blind. And then like a tree in it and some skeletons. I mean, it's nice. Don't get me wrong. It's just I don't know. All of my Death Guard models are on mud. So the other thing I bought was Mortarian. I can't remember his name. Basically, the Primark of the Death Guard. So they do two models. They do a plastic one and they do the Forge World super expensive one. I prefer the plastic one. I think he's pretty cool. Well, so I had planned to take him down to Ed's and pull him out as like for the last game, but it was nowhere near finished. So he's
fair enough.
Primed again. He's in partial parts.
Good grief, that's huge.
Yeah, he is really cool. So I've got his head separate to glue on there, and his base with all his little helpy friends, his little sassy nurglings. But yeah, once he's done, he's enormous 500 point boy.
I'm not surprised it's 500 points.
I love this model.
There's
some bits are like smoky bits as well, which I've primed in white. Lazy. But yeah, I absolutely adore this model, although it's got no chance of being transported anywhere because all of these bits are just...
Oh no. No.
I have spotted that there's a custom foam insert for the case I've got. Yeah, I did spot on Etsy somewhere I'd made a custom laser cut foam insert for the carry case that I've got to put just that model in. Like takes up an entire layer, which I think I might plump for.
Be like, why would you bother buying something like that? Just wrap it in tissue. But for that model being so big, and I mean, how much was that model? I guess it was expensive.
Retail, it's 70.
Yeah,
I bought this off eBay for 50. Yeah. But I mean, that's as much as what I paid for like an Imperial Knight. So
Yeah, it's about the size of an Imperial Knight.
Expensive boy.
Yeah, if you're going to spend that much on a model, then you probably want to spend that much on, or you probably want to spend a bit on looking after it, make sure it survives transport.
Yeah, it's not going to survive. It's so flimsy.
Well,
there's a couple of other models, but I want to keep those until we
Yeah.
talk about bespoke.
continuing on with some other stuff that we've been buying recently, I
Oh yes.
have, from the motherland of Russia, a whole bunch. Well, I don't think the company's from Russia, but they're Russian models from Bolt Action.
Yes.
And I've been painting these up recently, and as you can see, there's quite a few of them here. I really like painting them. There's 18 here that I've finished painting, and then over here in another box there's another 14 that just need the skin. I'm going to count all of these for this month, just so I don't have to keep them separate for next month. But that's 32 Russians that I've painted essentially in 3 days.
Mental.
Because for my unboxing video, I painted 2, and then I just sat down and finished off all of the others because I made up. They come on sprues of 8, so there was 16 that I made up as part of the first video, and then I just went ahead and painted them all, and then I started painting some more. So I've ended up with 18 fully painted, and the other 14 of 4 sprues are they just need some skin and some of the metalwork. They're nearly done.
Well, viewers, Ed is going to a local games group by him to play Bolt Action. So hopefully he can get some footage if everyone there agrees, which we can show next month or whenever it is. At the very least, some photos. I have also picked up the Japanese starter set. And when I say starter, it sounds it's not. It's a massive box.
It's the Bolt Action does starter armies right. You buy a starter army, and it gives you everything you need to start an army. You have a full army.
Full army, yeah. I've got a tank in my set as well. It hasn't got any tanks in his. So. And of course, then we're both going to print up some other, because obviously these are historical models, so there are designs online. Show us your Katyushka.
Yeah, so I have currently it's in bits because it's just come off of, bits of it are coming off of the printer, and there's still a few bits more I need to print. But this is a Gaz truck, which is a common civilian truck from the 1930s and 40s. And the Russian military used this just because it was available. And it was used as material transport, it was used as troop transport. But also with this framework on the back that kind of sits over the top of the whole thing, sort of like that. It is a rocket launcher. And this particular variety has 8 rails, and the rail has a top and a bottom, so it can launch 16 rockets at the same time. Kind of like that. And it was used for saturation bombardment. So you get a few of these trucks, you'd launch a whole bunch of rockets, loads of rockets all at once, at roughly where an enemy position was. You'd make all this noise, all these explosions, and then you'd send in the infantry. And because it's on just a normal truck, they're really quick. Like, you can drive these around, like, if you've got roads, you can hit 100 miles an hour if you really want to.
Nice. That's what you want with a load of missiles.
Yeah.
Raggedly balanced on the back.
I'm trying to find some historical information on practically how they were set up in a position, how they were loaded, how they were, like, what happens after you fire it. I know about the firing procedure. That's the famous bit. That's the fun bit. I want to know all of the logistics around it so that I can be a bit more historically accurate. Because I like the idea of having 2 trucks, like the actual Katyusha itself, and then just an ammo truck. It might not be something.
A trailer. Just a trailer.
Yeah, exactly. Did they use trailers? Would the Katyusha pull its own trailer of ammunition, or was there a second truck with the rockets? I don't know, because there's certainly not enough space on the truck itself for a lot of ammunition, given that each rocket is
Oh yeah, they're quite big compared to the size
It
of the vehicle.
is. It is as big as the cab. It is kind of as long as the cab is wide. So you wouldn't be storing them in the cab with the driver. You
Could they
can't
sit
fit.
underneath the bracket like that, where your thumb is now,
Yeah,
like across like that?
you can't really fit them there because there's this framework that supports the rails, and so that it can be elevated for different ranges. But just to compare this to a person,
Yay!
I think this is the biggest rocket size that was used, and I'm pretty sure that there are, like, over the course of the war and over the course of the 1950s and 60s as well, the Katyushas use all sorts of different ammunition types.
Oh, yeah, because I imagine it's just a cobbled together. What have you got?
It's not really cobbled together. It was a properly designed and manufactured thing, but they took advantage of the truck being a normal civilian truck for expediency, rather than building a made specifically for a Katyusha vehicle. If you just take the trucks that you already have hundreds of thousands of and put the Katyusha weapon system on the back, it's just quicker.
So is this a retrofit, or is this they're making new trucks and installing it on a new truck? Is it just taking advantage of a plant because we've got the factory that's making these down the road? It's already tooled and everything's set up to make this. So they're making new trucks, or are they going out in the field and going, "Mr. Smith, we're taking your truck off you"? It's being requisitioned for the war effort, kind of thing.
The answer is yes, all of those things. Any gas type truck that was that existed could have been requisitioned for military use. There are also a lot of gas trucks in military use and factories to make more gas trucks. And not all Katyushas were built on gas, the Russian-built trucks. They were also built on American trucks that were sent over under the Lend-Lease program. So for anyone in England, we keep hearing a lot about Lend-Lease and the Americans sending us over tanks and submachine guns. Well, they also sent food and medical supplies and trucks, and the Russians used those trucks and jeeps and other things for all sorts, and the Katyusha is one of those examples. And I've always really liked it. I think that the Katyusha is it's kind of fun in a way, because it's obviously it's a weapon of war and it's not fun in that kind of context, but in the just from an engineering point of view, it's such a simple, easy to build thing. It's just a few bits of wireframe. It's a few bits of metal framework and some girders to be the rails, but it was very well designed. It was very well used, and it was ultimately a very reliable and decisive weapon system.
It's one of the few military vehicles that would have a radio in it, a civilian radio. You could be there launching your missiles, listening to a bit of pop music, a bit of propaganda from the enemy.
I wonder if that's true. I don't know when radios started being common in trucks.
Yeah, no, I ain't got a clue either.
It is entirely possible that you would have a... when you said radio, I thought you meant a communications two-way radio system.
No.
Which is also possible, but less likely. I don't know. That's another thing that I'm going to have to research.
Yeah, I would imagine that you would have a division and then a commander in a different kind of vehicle that would have a radio. Yeah.
There's this famous thing with Russian tank squadrons that one of the tanks would have a radio to talk to the divisional commander, and then the tanks would talk to you'd talk to the next tank along by getting out of the hatch and then waving flags around with semaphore.
I was going to say, is it semaphore? I was going to say that's how
I don't know if it's specifically semaphore or there's another similar language. But that was done. By the end of the war, almost all Russian tanks had radios in, but there was a time when they were using flags to communicate with each other.
I imagine you would end up, if you had a row of tanks, like a row, you're going to get errors in communication as you go down the line.
That's always the case. So
if I'm communicating with you, I need you to, elevation 95. I don't really understand it, but you know what I mean. Like the coordinates of where I want you to fire. By the time that gets down a chain, you're going to have some errors might have slipped in there to the point where you're not quite aiming correctly.
I don't think it would ever be for aiming a specific shot. There would be information, like the information you would communicate from one tank to another is there are enemies roughly here, go and attack them, or
yeah. So the aiming would be done by the individuals in the vehicle.
It would be done by the tank commander specifically, and then the gunner would set off the shot when the commander ordered it. There's also a lot of variation in this. Like I say that way of doing things, and that is a very common way of doing things, but it's not the only way of doing things, and it varies by country and it varies by tank design as well. Certain tanks have different layouts of crew for other things. We've gone very historical and very
well, we're talking about historical models.
yeah. Another one that I 3D printed that isn't remotely ready is just to deal with your little tank that you've got. I've got a light anti-tank gun. I need to make some models up as some crew, but I've got that as well. I'm looking to get some. I think looking through the armies of the Soviet Union book, which is the army book essentially for bolt action. I think I've got pretty much everything, pretty much one of every crew served weapon. So I've got the howitzers and the anti-tank guns and the mortars and machine guns. The
starter set for each army is slightly different. As I mentioned, my Japanese starter set came with a tank, unlike Ed's Russian one.
The Russian starter set does come with a tank. I did not get the starter set. I just got the infantry boxes.
Oh, okay. I'm also printing up some light machine gun models I found on Thingiverse. Not as many Japanese ones on Thingiverse, so I'm a little bit at a disadvantage.
Yeah, there's a lot of options for the Soviet stuff. I'm kind of lucky in that regard.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. Interestingly, I have like kamikaze anti-tank troops in my army box. So
yeah,
I've not looked at the rules specifically, but if my guy runs up to one of your tanks, does the whole, I've got a bomb on the end of a stick, do I then lose that unit because it's a kamikaze?
Yes, you do. It is, however, another one of those things that is historically accurate.
Accurate, yes.
There is a certain level of, like, this is a real history that we're talking about. If you're playing Frostgrave or Warhammer or whatever, then it's completely fictional setting.
Yes,
But when we're talking about like World War II, this is a real thing that actually happened. All of these weapon systems were used to kill people, and in real life, it sits a little bit differently. And I can certainly still look at it as a game and have fun with it, but there is certainly a history there that I want to be respectful of.
Yes. Yeah, it's slightly sobering. I think that would be the way I'd put it.
Yeah, I actually I really like that way of saying it. Yeah. Should we move on to a lighter topic?
Yes.
With some of the things we're wanting to talk about today.
Mm-hmm. So we go on to the intimidating painting first.
The intimidating painter. Now, this is something someone has actually called me an intimidating painter recently. And I take that as a compliment, but also I want to challenge that thought, and we'll explain why over the next few minutes. Because what an intimidating painter is, in like as we're talking about it, what we mean by that is that you see someone's paint job, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on YouTube, whatever. You see someone else has painted a model, and it is so far out of your skill level that it intimidates you into not wanting to paint anymore.
Try, yeah.
And I think that is, from a psychological point of view, it's a very unfortunate thing to be an unfortunate conclusion to come to, and I'd much rather be considered as an inspiring painter rather than an intimidating painter.
Yeah. So for today's discussion, I've picked out some of the very first models I painted to show today, because I think when I first got back into painting, back to the brush, Games Workshop did a magazine for Age of Sigmar. So I picked that up because it was like £1.99 for the first issue, and you got free. What are they? Sigmarites?
They were the Stormcast Eternals.
Yes. So I bought that to have a play, and I borrowed paints from Angle and Foximits to paint this model up. Coincidentally, after I showed Ed that magazine, he bought the same one as well, because it came with some ghost rasps as well, didn't it?
Chain rasps.
Chain rasps. You've got one of those as a you've got one of those as a as one of
as
your
a ghost.
Yes,
a literal ghost. That magazine was something like £3 or £4, and it came with 10 chain rasps and 3 Stormcast.
It was a lot of models.
That's the cheapest I've ever seen Games Workshop models, and so it was worth finding.
So purely by accident, we both ended up painting the same model.
Yeah.
And Ed posted the two side by side on his Instagram.
This is such a long time ago.
and was like, yeah, which one of these was done by someone? This is their first model they've ever painted. It was quite cool. I mean, obviously, everyone that did comment did correctly pick out mine as being the first time painter.
I don't think I said. I think I just said which of these two is the better painted. I don't think I said. I think it was in the comments where I was saying that it was the first model painted.
Well, I think it was quite interesting. I don't think, even from day one, that my painting was particularly noobish. I think I dropped on, where being quite lucky that my painting was probably acceptable at the start. I wouldn't say it was a new level.
One thing I would say about that model in specific, and we're going to have to find some pictures of it because I've
got it next to me.
Yeah. Show it up. The one thing I would say about it, from a not necessarily from a skill set point of view, but from an expediency point of view, is that you have used a heavy wash over the not heavy wash, but you have heavily used a wash over the whole model.
Yeah, so a lot of my early models, if you look at the Space Marines, again, so going back to when I first started, I bought from Ed his old Space Marine models. So a lot of those I just chuck a black wash on. So if we look at this boy, so this was one of Ed's models. Yeah. We look at one of the newer ones I've painted. You can see that the modern one does not covered in black wash.
Yeah, you've got a much more vibrant purple over most of the model, but you're able to more deliberately pick out the shadows and darken them. Whereas with the older model, you were using a wash over the whole thing, which is, some would argue that's a noobish technique. Some would argue that's a very expedient technique.
I would say, yeah, but I don't feel like, I didn't feel intimidated by, essentially us both painting the same model. I didn't paint the base. Looking at it now, yeah, it's not anywhere near as good as what I could do now. I mean, that's everyone's the same. That, but I don't think it was that bad, and I think that's what you don't want to be in a situation is where you think, oh God, I'm not even going to have a go, because I mean, that was my very first model, and I would happily run that in a game if I actually played Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, but if someone else saw that model, even as simple as the paint job is, it still looks good. If someone looked at that model and was like, that looks so difficult to do that I don't think I even want to try. I'm waving around one of my Russians because I want to mention that I just like Paul, I've stopped using washes for a lot of models, but for my Russians, because they're a mass infantry army, I'm using washes quite heavily in this army, and now I can put that back down.
I mean, my Death Guard army wouldn't be a Death Guard army without brown wash on everything.
Yeah, exactly.
But look at these two next to each other.
This looks lovely and clean, and this looks puff.
The brown wash really sells it.
It absolutely does, yes.
So, when I first started painting, I borrowed these paints from Foxy Mitts and Anglecat. Yeah. Foxy Mitts sat down and showed me dry brushing when I went to borrow these paints, and I did that on a Nerf gun. And then subsequently I went to Ed's house and he showed me lots of the basics and stuff. But what I've got here are some of the very first things I painted, and I thought I'd show these because I think it's quite interesting. So, when I went to Ed's house, this was the first thing I started painting. So this is a 3D printed rhino. So like some of the sort of newbie mistakes I made on this was I did the base in a lighter brown and then dry brushed a darker brown rather than doing it the darker brown and dry brushing the lighter. Now
you say that, but there are certain situations where that is actually the way that you want to do it. And we might discuss that sometime. It's not the common way of doing it, certainly.
But yeah, so this is one of the very first things I painted up. Appreciate this is 3D printed. But yeah, and then I also printed some of these and we painted up.
Yeah.
And that was the first thing I painted, and that was Ed's homemade wash as well. That was the first time you made one of those. Was on those.
I've learned an important thing about that wash.
And my can, which is just a 3D printed, but obviously the model was designed to be a tin of beans. The scale's definitely tin of beansy. But these were all the things the very first things that I painted when I went round Ed's house. I
think we've hit on something important here, because it is all about getting stuck in and enjoying the process of painting. And this is something that I keep harping on about constantly in my videos, is it's enjoyable just to paint. What you paint doesn't have to end up looking amazing. It doesn't have to be the best thing. It doesn't have to rival the best painters on Instagram. It doesn't have to be like the most beautiful synthwave OSL perfect model with 100 hours gone into it. A quick half-hour paint job or an hour paint job, if you enjoyed painting it, then you enjoyed painting it, and that's good. That's the point.
As we've said before, I'm more of a painter anyway. Me and Ed play games together. Obviously, time of filming, we are just coming out of the pandemic, just for future historians. So we are hopefully coming out of the pandemic. I think that's the way we have to say it, because future historians would be like, which one? So my local gaming group, which I contacted at the start of lockdown, which was what 3 years ago now.
17 and 72 years ago.
So they're just starting up the group again. So I'll be going to my first game with people I've never played with before next month.
Yeah.
So that will be pretty cool.
Yeah, playing a game against someone that you don't know is kind of cool. It's kind of fun. A lot of the games that I've played over my whole life have been someone I know is a friend of mine, and we get together for a game. Yeah. But when you have an organised event that you can turn up to, bring your models along, and just find someone to play against, that's cool. Whether it's a gaming shop that's like, oh yeah, we can have open games for Warhammer 40k, for Bolt Action, for Frostgrave, whatever it is, just turn up and turn up your stuff and play. It's a different experience. I'm just thinking, if I went to Games Workshop with my army,
they wouldn't let you in.
Something like 90% of my army contains at least one either third party or 3D printed piece. It's like
away with you.
the original Gaunt's Go Squad, of which there are 6 models. There's 6 metal ones that I have, and then the new 6 ones, the plastic ones. And then there's a couple of other that are complete Games Workshop models. There's probably less than 20 that are 100% Games Workshop in the whole army.
I mean, even like this Rhino, that's a third-party hat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Third-party doors. I resin printed the shoulder pauldron. I resin printed the logos and glued on. Oh, focus.
Yeah.
I resin printed though. I don't know.
Mixing and matching parts between kits, especially from different companies, and also the customization that you get from 3D printing, is an important part. I don't know why we've kind of harped back on this topic again, but it's an important part of the hobby. And any company that says no, you can only use 100% our products is working against the community. Yeah. So just on the subject of bits, there's a topic that I've been wanting to do a video on for quite a while, and that's all of the leftover, the spare arms and the spare heads and spare pouches that you get from just about every plastic kit. It's really cool that all these kits come with all these options.
Extras,
and you can have
yeah.
them in different poses. But I've got a bits box with, I've got 70 left arms for orcs. Probably got the same number of right arms. I only counted the left arms. I've got Bretonians and Empire, like human arms. I've got the Frostgrave arms, and we just did some cowboys as well. So I've got loads of cowboy arms.
Yeah, the cowboys.
Yeah. So what I want to do is I want to make just the torso and legs to fit all of the spare arms that I've got. And there's a few cool things about that I want to discuss, but I need to kind of work out how to lay it out. So I'm not gonna dwell on that right now.
The next topic is going to be the idea of making your own models, or sort of, modifying existing models versus going out and buying things. Which obviously leads me back to this land raid and some other examples we've got to show.
Yeah.
So
I posted on my YouTube and on other places as well a little bit, just a little poll. It had slight different variations to the wording in different places, but the important thing that I wanted to find out was, for the model, like for everyone at home and for you as well, Paul, imagine the model that you want the most, no matter what it is. Doesn't have to exist. Imagine what you want the most. Now, is it something that's very expensive? Is it something that exists that's very expensive? Is it something that exists that it's very rare? Or is it something it doesn't exist that you'd want to make yourself? Or is it something that doesn't exist that you'd want to have someone make for you? Mm-hmm. Like a commission sculpt or something like that.
I did actually take part in this poll.
What was your answer?
I can't remember, because pretty much all of the above. So the example I want to give is like Forge World models. Okay, so obviously in 40k you have your standard plastic and fine cast
tank.
But Games Workshop also have a separate. Well, it's not a separate company, but it's a separate entity that make
subsidiary
that make low run parts. So they're all resin cast, and they've got their own rules and stuff like that. A lot of them are either OP or like you pay to win. It's very then there's obviously the big things like Titans and stuff like that, where they're never really going to sell a massive amount of them, so they're really expensive, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it used to be that anything that was even remotely a big model would have been a Forge World model, but now there are plastic Knight kits and the plastic Orc Stomper. Back in the day, those would always have been Forge World.
So, going back to my Death Guard army. So, obviously, when me and Ed were doing tests with his Tanith army, I wanted to deep strike, and the Death Guard don't really have a great deal of options in that. Now, one of the models that they sell on Forge World is a drop pod. So if I pick up my Space Marine drop pod, this is a standard Space Marine drop pod. So it looks like that. Obviously, it comes down, it goes poof, and the doors open.
On here.
Okay. Yeah. So the Death Guard don't have those. They're not an option. But
You don't have
what?
them at all?
No.
Okay.
What
Interesting.
they have in Forge World is well, it's a Forge World. It's a Chaos equivalent of one that the Space Marines stopped using because the machine spirit was unpredictable, and so it's a similar design, except for it's got blades pointing down and little spikes coming out of it, and that unit can fly around and cut models up with its blades. And once you've emptied all the troops out, you can use it as a separate unit. Now, that's a Forge World exclusive, and I don't want to play Forge World exclusive prices. So what I made, and there are websites that show you how to make this. So this is a standard. I'll hold it this way because you can see the one side that's painted. This is a standard. This is a standard drop pod where you cut these arms and glue them on upside down. So
it's essentially it's just a modified version of the standard kit.
It's a modified version of the standard kit. I can get a drop pod off eBay, 15 quid. Every day of the week I can get them for 15 quid. There's loads on eBay. The Forge World model, how much was it? I can't remember. It was silly money. I wasn't prepared to pay it for something as simple as that. So in this instance, that's a model I wanted, but it was too expensive. So it existed. Yeah, I want it, but only from a gameplay advantage. I don't want to pay to win. Here's a nice cheap solution. I suppose if we go back to my biker model, that's a third-party model that I wanted because it's cool. It's nice to have.
Did you want a Chaos Biker, and you went out to find this, or is it just that you saw the model and then you just wanted it straight away?
Yeah, I saw the model and wanted it. So
yeah,
I'm looking for unique stuff. I don't want my army to be the same as everyone else's army. I want some variation. And when I come across this, it's like, yeah, that's brilliant. It fits the theme perfectly. It's got all the tentacles and the spikes and everything to fit perfectly within a Death Guard army. So again, that's something. I suppose models that I want that don't exist. I want Sisters of Battle on horses. So like the
Sisters Cavalry would be cool.
Like the Skitari models where they're on like robotic horses. Those are really cool, and I've seen some really nice kit bashes. And as like we mentioned last month with yourself talking about the Gene Stealer bikers and using those for a kit bash.
The Atlans, yeah.
I want to do it, but I don't want to spend that much money.
How much is a squad of the Skitari cavalry?
The Skitari, the three of them on the cool horse things. Oh, the page is refreshed. Isn't that nice of it? Are £35. So that's for three of them. So
more than a tenner per model.
Yeah.
Plus you have to add on a sister.
And then the cheapest set of sisters that you can get is the Retributor squad.
That's the cheapest?
Yeah.
Weird. All right.
So another 35 quid. So suddenly you've spent 70 quid on 3 units. I mean, I appreciate you'd have some left over.
Yeah, you'd have bits left over. You'd have Skitarii left over, and you'd have a few spare sisters. I'm assuming you'd be grabbing some arms from your bits box.
The person that I saw had done it, just used the sisters' arms, and they just cut them and changed the orientation.
Yeah, that works too.
So yeah, there are people who do Patreons who are designers. So I actually contacted a designer about designing a model for me. Well, unfortunately, he was unable to take on that commission because he was already up to his eyeballs in commissions.
Some of the good ones are always busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's kind of an area where I'd like to, because there's no way I could artistically create something like that. I just don't have the abilities, you know. What I have got is some Breton horses that Ed gave me. That I'm going
Bretonian horses, yes.
Bretonian ones, which
those.
have a go with. And I have got a third party. This is an Inquisitor model made by, I think it was Hexi Labs.
Who is it that made... There is another third-party company that made mechanical horses with female warriors on tops in a science fiction style.
I don't know.
I'm going to have to see if I can find that, because I can't remember who that was. Yeah. It might have been Artel.
I love this model.
But that model is really cool.
Yeah.
My sister wants it as well.
Yeah, I quite like that, the idea of that. So to go back to your poll, all of the above, because I'll just give you examples of all of the above.
Yeah, fair enough. I
can't do, I suppose, green stuff to the same level that you can. I mean, you've done some...
The most complex thing I've done is the cloak badge for the 54mm Gaunt's Ghost model, and that was just me experimenting. And if I'm honest, I've cut that off because I wasn't happy with it. I've got an alternate thing that I'm going to use instead. From my side of things, the models that I've wanted right now, there's not much that I want. And it's just a case of, from a conceptual point, what do I want to... What's missing in my collection? And I can't really think of anything.
Yeah, I mean, with 3D printers, it like
gets very
Cahusa you've
make.
got in your hand. Yeah. If you didn't have that, then I think you would be out looking for a toy truck that's in the right scale and then making the armament yourself, wouldn't you? At the end of the day, it's
almost certainly, yeah. Because I have that that kind of kitbashy proper Lego. I never liked actual Lego because it doesn't have the finesse that I like, but model making like this does. But yeah, I wanted the Katusha, and I looked around to see if I could find it, because I think sculpting this from scratch it's still outside of my skill level. Digital sculpting or physical sculpting. But back when I used to play orcs are a lot more forgiving when it comes to making vehicles, making stuff, making conversions. And there was always two models that I wanted from the army list. Well, that's not true, there's three, but I'll start with the two. One was the Stomper, and one was originally it was a fighter bomber, but there's now various different versions.
Yeah,
of
they
planes.
changed all the planes, didn't they?
Yeah. And I always had in my head an idea for what I wanted to do with a Stomper. And it was one of those things where it's such a big project that I was probably never going to get around to it. And thankfully, some very nice chap
found one really cheap on Amazon Marketplace.
Yeah, Paul found one on the marketplace and bought it for me, so that's really cool. So
I paid less than 40 quid for it.
Yeah, less than 40 quid for a Stomper. It's missing all of the Gretchen, but I've got Gretchen, so that's not a problem. And I'm going to convert it in kitbash stuff onto it. Anyway, back in the day, before I had a 3D printer, before I had any real ability to build from scratch, because I could always, if I had a model kit, I could convert it into an orc kit. It's the old joke. All kits are orc kits.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to do would have required me scratch building. I now have the skills for that. It's still a big project, and I'm not going to do it because it's too big of a project. But what I wanted to do was to create a Stomper in a slightly different style from the standard one. Well, a very different style. Take Ed 209.
Yeah.
And a Imperial, is it the Warhound Titan?
The smallest Titan, yeah.
Yeah. Take a Imperial Warhound Titan, just the style of it, and Ed 209's legs, mash them together, and then orcify it with all the plates and the guns everywhere. That's, in my head, that's what I wanted to build.
So you wanted a Warhound Titan with chicken legs?
Sort of.
Yeah. Baba Yaga
But like
legs.
I say, that was such a big project, I was never going to get around to it. The other thing is the flyer. Now, I had a cool idea because people keep making that. As I said, all kits are Orc kits. People take World War II airfix kits and turn them into Orc fighter bombers and Blitzer bombers and whatever. I didn't want to go for a real world model kit. I wanted to use a science fiction fighter, and I think I saw someone use an X-wing from Star Wars as an Orc flyer, and that was pretty cool.
I'm just thinking the Battlestar Galactica Viper. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it?
And so what I did is I found a Battlestar Galactica Viper. Congratulations for preempting me on that. And I 3D printed the Viper in the right. I kind of scaled it to the right size, printed that out. I've cut into where the cockpit is so that I can fit an Orc model in. It is nowhere near done. I haven't even finished kit bashing it, let alone started painting it or anything like that. But that was a cool project that I wanted to build it myself, and it's a very orky thing to want to build it yourself. The third option, the third model I mentioned is a Weird Boy, because back in 3rd edition Orcs didn't have Weird Boys, but they were fun and cool, and I wanted one. Now,
so the model doesn't exist, but the character, the unit type existed in the lore. Is that what you mean?
The unit type didn't exist in the 3rd edition codex. In the lore, they always existed. They were never pulled from the lore, as far as I'm aware, but they weren't available as a unit in 3rd edition for the Orcs. And that's when I was playing, and so I missed out on that. There was no model because it wasn't in the codex. But now there are Weird Boys. The Weird Boys are back in the codex, and so there are models for them now. I don't like any of the models for them. And so I've got a little pot in my bits box with that little 3D printed misprint thing, and I've got some other bits, and I'm probably going to have a go at sculpting my own Orc Weird Boy.
I quite like the Orc model, the plain models that are out at the minute. I really enjoy those. They just seem really fun.
Which ones?
There's a bomber, and there's a fighter.
Oh, the planes. Right,
Yeah.
we're going back to the planes.
Yeah, going back to the planes. Yeah, I really like those models. I mean,
if I'm honest, I do actually like the Orc planes.
I mean, you've got obviously this.
They look better than that.
I like the Forge World, the one that looks like a Viper. Going back again, there's a Forge World one that's Xeon Interceptor.
Yeah,
I like that. It looks very Battlestar.
To wrap off my Orc thoughts, I'm not really as interested in making Orc models at the moment because I'm not playing Warhammer 40k very much. I'm pretty much only playing it for the Tanith first and only because I want to help out with the Tanith Codex.
Yes.
In terms of playing, I'd much rather play Frostgrave and Bolt Action rather than playing 40k. Particularly as I don't like 9th edition 40k. The rule system is just so much more restrictive, but also the way that the rulebook is written is it's probably the worst written rulebook
we had
40k's ever had.
We had some instance in the battle reports where we were looking for certain, and we couldn't find it. Those will be in the battle
glossary.
reports, I'm sure.
The glossary in the 9th edition codex is basically useless, and you're going to spend ages and ages, particularly if you're not familiar with the rules. Once you've got a hang of it, that's the same with any system. Once you've got a hang of it, you don't need to refer to the rulebook very often. And there was another rule that was in the margin.
Yeah, there was one that you found in the margin. Yeah,
and it's like you read through the actual block of text and it's not there, and then in the margin there's this little box and it's there. It's like, why is that a rule? That should be the examples. But whatever. It's written how it's written, and I'm not a fan.
So going back to the Orcs, I always
Orcs.
I'm disappointed that the looted vehicle rule's gone. Like,
yeah,
that was really cool.
As with any kits, an Orc kit, if you have made for example, I have an Orc Basilisk, a captured Imperial Guard Basilisk that the Orcs have taken over, and that can easily and quite happily be used as a, I think it's a gun truck, is what they're called now. But it's just an orc vehicle with a big cannon on it. Sounds like a basilisk to me. And so you just use that same model and use the different rules for it.
If it was official, if it was in the official rules, I think you'd see a lot more customization. I think it's fun. It's fun.
Well, I think that's the point. They don't want the customization. They want to remove as much customization as possible.
But why?
That's the way.
If you said it's got to be Games Workshop, it's got to be Games Workshop units that the orcs have taken over. So then, what does it matter whether you've got orcs on a rhino?
It's for tournament play.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem as fun.
Games Workshop, 8th not so much, but certainly 9th edition is specifically geared towards tournament play. And to the detriment of the game. The game is worse because of it. It is less fun because it has been specifically geared towards only being suitable for tournament play. They made this big thing about it being, oh yeah, you can play narrative stuff and you can play with the points, the power points instead of actual points, and those things are just fundamentally worse. And then the actual core game has been massively restricted because they want it for tournament play, and so you have to have this exact unit will be played in this exact way with these exact options, and it doesn't suit for orcs, and it doesn't suit for the Death Guard, and it doesn't suit for the wide variety of regiments of Imperial Guard, and it doesn't suit for most armies. It doesn't even really suit for Space Marines because you have different chapters that are
slightly different.
Like a Codex compliant chapter, sure, fine. They're going to be very strict about how they deploy for battle, but other chapters that are not so strict on the Codex compliant, they should have the ability to be much more flexible with their models and the rules that they're using, so long as the rules end up being balanced. But that's not what Games Workshop are doing. Games Workshop have restricted everything so that everything has to be played in a certain way so that tournaments are fair, so that someone can come against an opposing player and know exactly what they're going to face without having to look stuff up.
Yeah, I was watching a video on YouTube last week and they were talking about should Forge World models be allowed in tournament play, because
they're almost never allowed in tournaments.
Yeah, because the Forge World Compendium, is that what they call their book?
Compendium
is updated on a different cycle to the codexes. You can end up in situations where you end up with a really OP model. Yeah. So until the next compendium's out, you can run this model and it's really over the top.
Well, it's just another thing that Games Workshop aren't going to deal with. They're just going to say, oh, Forge World models are no longer suitable for tournament. The end.
Yeah,
that's how they deal with that. And most tournaments are in that situation where either official or unofficial tournaments, they just don't allow Forge World stuff because it's so off the wall, batshit, and they don't update the rules in time for, like, in line with Citadel's 40k releases.
It should all just be one book. I don't understand why they're not in the normal codex anyway. Just even just from a money making point of view, if the fancy Forge World model was in the codex, you'd sell more of them. Yeah. And you might sell enough of them to think, oh, actually, let's make a plastic kit. Let's hand this over to Citadel to make a regular for sale kit rather than having it languish in. But the other side of that is that then you have to keep it forever because it's in the codex. Well, they don't, do they? They just move it to Legends, and that's that. Yeah, I guess there is that as well. My sister's a battle repressor. God bless it. Half of the fun orc stuff didn't even make it to Legends. No, they only introduced the Legends in 8th, so anything that was discontinued before that's just gone. Yeah. Orcs are a lot less fun than they used to be. If I do end up making a Weird Boy if I get the hankering to do orcs again,
And I shouldn't be bad mouthing orcs because this is the Orktober episode.
It is. It is.
I do have a plan to maybe paint an orc model at the end of the month. Just throw it out on the last day of October. I'm not sure if I'm going to get around to that because I've got a lot of videos to edit. Orc Weird Boy Tower. If I do make the Orc Weird Boy, if I go ahead and sculpt up that how I want it, I'm going to make an Orc Weird Boy Tower. Because that...
What's the tower?
Back in the day, that's fun.
What's that then?
So, imagine a wheeled chassis, like just the chassis of a car, with a tall tower, and then at the top of the tower is a little room that the Weird Boy sits in.
Like a crow's nest.
And it drives... Yeah, exactly. It's exactly a crow's nest. And it drives around, and the Weird Boy casts psychic powers from the top of this tower. The lore reason for this is also hilarious, because Orc Weird Boys are weird, and the other orcs don't like them.
Yes.
And a closer a Weird Boy is to another orc, the more that they like sap the Wa energy, that like the mental capacity of the orcs.
Make them less.
And so orcs don't really want to be around the Weird Boys, and so they stick them up this tower and then drive them into battle. And in a massive battle, when you've got hundreds of thousands of orcs, they're still getting enough Wa energy to cast their Wa psychic powers, but they're not pissing off the individual orcs by draining directly from any one. And that definitely makes sense.
It doesn't have to. They just have to believe it makes sense.
Exactly. See, that's always that's backwards from the way that the logic actually works. Orc stuff doesn't work just because orcs believe it works. That's not quite the function of that. What it is that orcs have a natural understanding of mechanical and scientific things. They don't think about it. They don't study science or engineering or anything like that. They just have a natural understanding of how it basically works. And so when they build something, it's going to work because they've built it with a basic understanding of how that particular thing is supposed to work. And then you do get very occasionally specific... Well, you get mech boys who are the engineers. They think about things a bit more. But you do get then orcs like Orchimedes, who can make a teleporter that can transport a Titan, which the AdMech were very, very excited about. And they wanted it.
Definitely.
And other such hilarious and fun things that the orcs get up to.
What are the orangutan-looking species that the Inquisitor have that can do that kind of thing?
I can't remember what they're called, but I know what you mean. They're a species that are much higher tech than the Imperium is currently.
I can't think what they're called either, but those were pretty cool. They're just like they'll take your item off you, and they might make it look prettier, or they might make it 10 times better, or...
I don't remember what they're called. I think there was only ever one model.
There is only one model.
It's just an orangutan with a little... sort of looks like a ray gun, but I think it's a machine tool for a scanner.
I think it only comes in the Inquisitor army. I like the idea of like other species that don't really field an army. I like those, pretty cool. Oh, so Jacaro is the species. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, the Jacaro. The Jacaro are pretty cool. They only appeared in the lore like very rarely, but there's a model for them. So.
I remember whose video I was watching the other day, and they were talking about alien, like Xenos species that aren't really mentioned in the game. They're only sort of in the lore. It was quite cool. I think it might have been Snipe and Webs where they were talking about.
Yeah, it sounds like a very Snipe and Web type video. There's also the Zotes. There have been 3 Zote models. There were is
that the one that was a Blackstone Fortress add-on, like a big slug?
Sort of like a lizard centaur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was in Blackstone Fortress.
Because the Blackstone Fortress is the 3rd one, And then the first two were they were released at the same time. They're variants of the same original sculpt back in ye olden days. So just before we pop over to the Order Redactors, while we have spoken about the models that we made this month, we've actually missed some.
Yes.
Are some drop troops that we painted, and there will in a couple of weeks' time be a mini Back to the Brush episode, a mini series episode, where we paint these up. I painted 5 of them, and Paul painted the other 5, so it's a joint effort.
Yes, yeah.
And these are some drop troops from the kind of just because of the Drop Troops fan codex.
Yeah, so we wanted to sort of include those in one of the games. So we've got half of them are normal. They're Cadians, aren't they? They're Cadians. Yeah, the Cadian shock troop.
Plastic Cadians.
And we printed some backpacks for them. And then the other half are Divic Designs, sort of generic space troopers with drop packs, but
the jump pack is very similar, but otherwise they are science fiction soldiers with the drop packs.
But yeah, they work perfectly
grav
for the game. Yeah.
Which are a pretty cool choice if you are looking at making a Drop Troops army or something similar. But we'll be featuring those in a video coming soon, so do check out for that. And I've printed off another 2, slightly scaled up.
Oh yeah, because I did them like 90%, didn't I?
Because these ones, the Divic Designs models, they're not in 32 hero scale for Warhammer 40k. They are slightly smaller, and if you scale them up, I've actually scaled them by 10%, which is what Divic recommends, and they're actually taller than the Cadians. And so I think maybe 7 or 8% is kind of where you want it. But if you're printing a whole army, you'll
it doesn't
get
matter
to the scale. Yeah. But yeah, that is a bit of a sneak peek to an upcoming video which we wanted to mention. And now let's talk about the Order Redactors.
So again, just to go over what the Order Redactors is, it would be, if you've spotted anything factual that we've said during today's episode that is actually incorrect, unfactual, if you go ahead and leave a correction in the comments below, we will read it out at next month's episode.
Yeah. Yep.
And discuss how wrong Ed, never me, just Ed, how wrong Ed was.
Mostly me. It's basically because I talk the most, and so I say the most wrong things. So that's how it works. So yeah, you can join the Order Redactors by putting Order Redactors at the beginning of a comment in the comment section below to either add more information or to correct the things we've said wrong. But we have, from last month's episode, Ordo Redactus from the official Ordo Redactus researchers. And so, transmissions begin. The first observation is that it has been confirmed that Max Factory made the Space Marine heroes. So that we were discussing the Space Marine heroes and whether they were McFarlane or something else, and they found, and the Ordo Redactus researchers have found that is Max Factory.
I mean, I do have a leaflet, but I was playing with shimmer paints on it, so I can't really see much anymore.
Coating it with paint so you couldn't read it anymore. The primary research displayed by Back to the Brush episode 13 is pleasing to the Order Redactus. What research did I do? I can't remember. Did you do it or did I do it?
I don't know.
I'm not going back to watch last month's episode to work it out. As was Henry's, the Emperor's fluffy avatar, editing skills perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, so initially I was editing, and I had taken a photo of Henry sat on my lap here while I was editing it, and then I'd sent a photo to the Order Redactors saying co-edited by Henry, and it was a picture of him.
Yeah, that's a fun picture. That's on the Instagram if you want to go and check that out. The scene where the heretic Ed is pushed to the side to allow Dusty to shine is of particular importance. That was a bit funny. Of fun.
Yeah.
I just kind of shrunk my my webcam view so that we could see Dusty in the background of Paul's. That was I like to throw those in when the cats are walking around in the background. There was some feedback issues, however, with Ed's sound at the start of the episode. As Paul mentioned, the last episode had some problems. And
my recording, I accidentally recorded both my mic and the Discord, so we ended up with
my mic.
Yeah, so it was a bit
as one audio track, and because it's over the internet, my audio track was kind of choppy and buzzy, and I spent a few hours trying to fix up the audio, and I did the best I could.
I mean, it was way better. It was way better than it was. So
yeah. Well, we made it work, and if there's only a few bits of feedback and buzzing at the beginning of the episode, that is a success overall, because the audio problem was over the entire of last episode. So
except for the interview, the audio was perfect in the interview.
Oh, actually, that's a good point. The audio being separate, separate audio for the interview, so that was fine. And the audio redactor says that the interview conducted was informative and interesting. The audio redactor is pleased with this segment. Well, that's good. That's something that we kind of went out of our way to do that, and we're glad that it's. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, good. A good segment. Good
well, I mean, we went away and bought some Cadians to make into drop troops, so obviously left an impression on us.
We've ended up with some drop troops models, and we used them in one of our games. Spoiler warning. So there's that. And lastly, there is a good quantity of cat footage. More is always welcomed and demanded. Transmission.
Not at all this month.
I don't think there's been any cats today. No, there's.
Hang on, I can correct it. Maisie, come here.
There we go.
Here's Maisie girl.
There has now officially been a cat in today's episode.
She's not impressed. She's like, I'm trying to sleep on the chair.
We could say that throughout the whole episode there has been a Katusha.
Katusha? What do you think, Bab? No, you're not impressed, are you? I'll put you on my
Still not impressed. Nah. So now with the audio redactors complete, we'll just mention the Instagram page that we have for the podcast. Every month we publish a bunch of the photographs of the stuff we're talking about, so that you don't have to kind of squint at this fuzzy out of focus view. You can actually have a decent look at the models we are talking about. And so we look forward to seeing you again next month when we get back to the brush. I'm Edscar.
And I'm Puan.
Goodbye. See you next month.